Hello everyone, welcome back to Week's Ideas. I'm Walter, and in today's video we're going to be looking at conditional drop-down menus for country, state and city. Now over here we have the countries drop-down that has populated with all the countries in the world, and here we have the states drop-down that is not filled up yet until we select the country, and here as well we have a city drop-down that is not populated until we select a state. So let's go ahead and give this a try. So let's go ahead and search for United States, and over here when you select United States, the state field or the states drop down is populated, and here when you go ahead and select a state, you can come over to the city drop down, and you can see that the city drop down is populated with all the cities in Alabama. Now let's go ahead and choose another city. You can see that we have all the cities from this particular state. Now you can do this for other countries as well. Let's go ahead and search for India. Now when you click on India, it's going to populate all these with the states in India. Now if you go over to Delhi, and you can select the cities and see all the cities in Delhi. Now I'm going to share with you the step-by-step procedure that I used to achieve this, but before we dive right in, please, I would appreciate it if you're viewing this video, please do subscribe. This would be a great support, and it will also help YouTube to get these videos across to all Wixers around the world looking to add amazing features like this in their website. So I do appreciate you greatly, and most importantly, you can leave me a comment in the comment section and I'll do my best to get across to you with a reply. Lastly, please don't forget to turn on your bell notifications to be notified of my future videos like this. And now if you're excited to join me, let's dive right into this tutorial. Great, so this is the page where I'm going to be working on, and I've gone ahead to add the 3 drop down elements that I'm going to be using for this tutorial. But fear not, I'm going to share with you exactly how I achieved these. But first of all, we need to turn on our dev mode. So head over to this section, hover on dev mode and turn on your dev mode. Now you can see we have a sidebar and we have a section to write in our code. We're going to get to this section later on, so let's go ahead and minimize. Now first of all, to add a drop down, head over to add element and go all the way to the input, and over at the selection you can see the drop down option. You can drag and drop any of these designs that you want and go ahead and customize it. So you can click on this design icon to customize your drop down as much as you want to. So I'm going ahead to do that, and the most important thing I want to let you know is that we're not adding any choices to this drop down. So I'm going ahead to delete all the options that I had for my drop downs because this will be populated from the code. Another most important thing is going over to the settings, and here you can see I have a placeholder text where I have added a select country, which is what you see right here. And as you can see, we're using the custom drop down list type for the country, and we enabled our autocomplete. This is what gives us the ability to be able to search for all the countries in the world from this drop down. So for the countries drop down, you can go ahead and select that option. However, for the other options, I'm not using the custom drop-down list type. I'm actually using the browser list type. And the reason for this is so that we are able to clear all of the states and drop-down after we've selected a different country. Similar to the countries drop-down, I've also removed all the options for the states and all the options for the city. And the states and cities drop-down are exactly alike. Only difference is that we have different placeholder text. Now most importantly, you can see that I've already gone ahead to change the IDs of these elements, and as you can see, this is called the drop down country, this is called the drop down states, and this is called the drop down cities. These IDs are going to be important for us during the process of writing the code. Now you can change this ID by going to your code section, and over here in the properties panel, toggle this properties panel on and off to change the ID of your specific element. Now you can go ahead to exactly use what I have here. This is completely fine. Now let's go ahead and minimize this and do something else that is very important to this tutorial. We're going to head over to our Velo sidebar, and over here that says packages and apps, go ahead and click on that and go ahead and install packages from npm. Now we're going to be installing a specific npm package that contains a library of all the countries, states and cities in the world, and they're able to help us to search for these items using JavaScript. Now go ahead and make sure that you selected npm and go to the search bar and search for country, state, city. Now once you're done, you're going to select the very first option that you see and install that. Now wait for that to install, and then go ahead and click on view. Now we want to view this documentation to see how we're going to make use of this feature in our website. So go ahead and close up your sidebar and then expand your code panel so we can have a proper look on how to make use of this. So scroll all the way down until you get to the usage, and here you can see how this is being used. And we're going to be importing this library to our front end. So go ahead and copy this library and then bring it to your front end. So now we've successfully imported our package to our front end, and we can begin making use of this functionality in our code. But most importantly, we want to head back to that documentation and look at how to get the countries. As you can see from here, we have a very simple syntax to get the list of countries. But first of all, let's head back to our code. We're going to go ahead and create a function that is called populate country. Now, inside of this function, we're going to be using the try-catch statement to actually populate our countries. And the reason for using this is so that if we have any errors, we can handle those errors properly. Now, inside of the try, we're going to go ahead and assign a constant. And this constant is going to be called countries. Now, this countries is going to hold a list of all the countries in the world that we're going to be getting from this particular package. So head over to this section where it says country.getAll countries and copy that and bring it over to this section and simply assign it to our constant. As you can see, we've started making use of our country option. Now, inside of our catch section, we're going to go ahead and just console in an error, and that is going to let us know if there's an error in our code during the process of populating our country. So let's just use the template literal and says error populating countries. And then we're going to go ahead and actually get that message or error message that we received. Now, this is all looking good, but there is something important we need to do. We need to console this to log so that we can take a look at how the countries array actually comes out. So let's go ahead and add this constant which holds all the countries in the world to our console.log, and then make sure that we call this function inside of our ready function. So go ahead and clear this comment and add this to our ready function. Now we're good to go. We're going to publish this site and have a look at this page on the live site. Amazing. So now we are on the live site, and as you can see from here, we do not have any options yet because we've not started populating our drop downs. But we're going to check out the console.log. So right click on your mouse and head over to inspect, and over here in the console, we're going to have a look at this array or this option that we have just added to our console. As you can see, we have a log over here that contains the list of all the countries. And if you further expand on each of these items, you can see we have the currency, the flag, the ISO code, the name, everything that we really need to actually get this working. Now, what we need to do is we need to use the name as the label for our drop down, and we're going to be using the ISO code as the value for our drop down. Now, the ISO code is going to act as an ID because they are actually unique to each of the countries. So what we need to do is to be able to export or extract this data properly using the map method. So let's go ahead and close this and head back to our code. Alright, so over here we're going to get rid of this console.log because we no longer need it. The next thing we want to do now is to actually populate our countries drop down. So what we need to do now is to go ahead and actually select our countries drop down. So head back to your page, click on your countries drop down, and over here in the properties panel you can see that we have the ID. Copy that ID and bring it right over here. And then we're going to go ahead and populate the options for this particular drop down. Now over here you can see from the Wix API that the drop down actually has a syntax of ways that we can actually use to populate its drop down. So we need to populate the label, and we also need to populate the value. The label is what people see, and the value is what is in the backend, which is the ISO code that we're going to use later on to filter our states and to filter our cities. So let's go ahead and actually start doing this. But as you can see from over here, the options needs to be an array. But we're going to make use of the map method to actually map through all of this data and extract the name and the ISO code. So let's head back to our page and actually get this working. So let's get over to our countries, copy our countries, and then use the map method to actually start mapping through this data. So now we've been able to map each of the items that we have, and we're holding all of these items directly from our countries, and we can use the dot method to actually get each item that we're looking for. So let's go ahead and actually start adding the label. So the label is going to look like that with the country, and then dot the name, and the name that I'm using right now is the name from this section, which is the name of the country, which is going to be the label. And then the other thing that we need to add is the value. So the value is going to be important later on in this tutorial. So we're going to add a country and then the ISO code. So the ISO code again is right over here, so we can easily copy this and just bring it to our page. But since I already remember what it's called, I just wrote that down. Now we've successfully populated our countries drop down, and we can publish and view this in the live site to have a look at how that looks like. So we're here on our live site, and when we click on this drop down, you can see that it's been populated with the countries in the world, but we're still missing the states and the city and the state is going to be the next one we're going to populate using the options from our drop down. So let's head back to our website, and here we're going to also create another function to populate our states. So we can do exactly the same thing and just copy paste this function just to make things a little bit faster. Now over here we're going to go ahead and change this function to say populate states, and here we're going to go ahead and change this constant to say state, and here you can see that we need the state in order to get all the states. However, this is a little bit different, so let's head back to our documentation to see how to get the states. Now, getting all the countries and getting all the states are almost the same thing, because getting all the states is getting all the states in the world, and getting all the countries, getting all the countries in the world. But what we need to do is that we need to get all the states of the country. So we're going to scroll all the way down to a section where it tells us to get the states by the country. So here we have get the state by code, and here it says get states of country, and this is exactly what we need. And as you can see, this function does look a little bit different, but let's go ahead and copy this syntax. Now we're going to go ahead and replace everything we have here with this syntax that we have. Now we're going to add this country code. As you remember, I told you we're going to be using the ISO code or the country code to filter through our drop downs, and so we're going to be using the ISO code of this country to filter this particular drop down. So copy this and paste it as a parameter of your function, and go ahead and copy these states and replace that here. And we also need to change the state here, change the state here, and change the state here. Now we're going to go ahead and also change the ID for our state. So go ahead and change that from here. Click on your states, copy the ID, and bring it right over here. Now this is not going to work yet because we need to add an unchanged function or event to our countries to populate the state. And let's go ahead and do that real quick. Let's head over to our drop down country so that when we change the country, we populate the state. So click on your countries drop down and head over to your event handler. Now click on this unchanged function or change event and click on that. Now once you do that, which is going to automatically add a snippet of code for you, this is going to be the event that changes our or populates our drop down. Now inside of our event, we're going to go ahead and create a variable and say selected country code. So this is going to be equal to the event.target.value. So this is going to be the value of our country drop down, which if you remember is the ISO code. And here we're going to go ahead and now populate this particular drop down. So copy this function we have over here, and we're going to replace this country code with this constant that we have just created. And most importantly, what I want to do is each time we change or choose an option from our country drop down, I'm going to go ahead and actually undefine or remove the values from our states and city. So let's go ahead and get the IDs for our states and city. And over here, what we're going to do is just to copy this right over here, bring it right here, and say that value is equal to undefined. Now we're also going to do the same thing for our city so that each time the user actually selects an option, it kind of clears those options from our states and cities drop down. So let's publish these and view how this looks on the live site. Amazing. So we're here on our live site and I've just refreshed the page. And if we go over here and actually search for a country, let's search for United States. We can see we have all the states populated over here. However, the city is not yet populated. And if we go ahead and change the country, the states will be undefined or the value will be reset. So next thing we want to do is to be able to change or conditionally change the city based on the state. And that brings us to the next part of our function. All right, so we're going to change a couple of things here. This is saying countries. This should be states, just to be sure that when you get the error, you're able to identify what errors you're getting. But don't worry, this code will be in the comment section below, so you can easily copy this code and paste on your site. So here we're going to go ahead and change this and say populate cities. And over here, we're going to go ahead and change this to city. And we have an error here to city, so we're going to change this to city, change this to city as well, just to make this consistent. And we're also going to change this to cities. Now the city is going to be a little bit tricky, and the reason for this is because we're getting the list of the cities in a country, and we are also refining the search to actually get the cities from a particular state in the country. So we need the country code and we also need the state code. That is, we need the country's ISO code and we also need the state's ISO code. And as you can see from over here, we've already defined that the value for our drop-down state should be the ISO code. So let's just head back to this documentation and look at how to get a city from state. So here we just get state from city, get cities of states. This is exactly what we want, and so we're going to go ahead and actually copy this syntax. All right, so we're going to go head over to this section and just replace this syntax over here. So we have the country code, which we did earlier for the states, but now we also need the state code. So let's just go ahead and populate that way. Now you can see that we're very close to getting this done, and we also need to change this ID right over here to the cities because we're trying to populate the cities. Let's just make sure that that works properly. So we're done with the function for the populate cities, and we just need to add an unchanged event to our drop down states. So go over to this event handlers and add an unchanged event. Now once you're done, you can see that we have this event here, and we're going to do almost the same thing that we had for the state, a little bit different because since we're getting the country code and the state code is going to look a bit different. So over here we're going to define two constants, and the first one is going to be the selected country code, which is going to be the value for our countries drop down. So let's just head over to our countries drop down here and copy the selector and bring it right over here, and that is the value that we need. All right, and then the next thing we're going to also add is the selected state code, which is going to be the ISO code for our states element. And since we are changing the states drop down, then we can easily just use the event.target.value to get the value that was just selected from the states drop down. And then we're just going to head back to the top and copy this function to populate our cities drop down. So this is the part that requires us to change the selected country code right here and to change the selected state code right here. Now this is exactly what we needed to do, but most importantly we want to also make the cities undefined when we change the states. All right, this will make sure that we don't have any lagging values when the user is trying to select a different country and it just doesn't show. So I'm going to share this with you just later on so you can see what this does when we do not add this option. But let's go ahead and publish this and view our ready work on the live side. All right, so we are here on the live side, and let's have a look at how this looks. So we choose an option from the countries, and this actually changes the values of our selected drop down items. So over here we can choose different items, and it seems like we're not able to select this because there is no value in this, and the problem might be because of the function that we have right over here. So let's go ahead and quickly fix this. The problem is that there is no ISO code for the city, and that means we need to use a different structure for this. And the structure that can help you to identify what country or what state this is we're going to be using template literal to add in some custom value to it. So what I want to add over here is I want to add a city, and I want to add the country code. So let's go ahead and add a country code. And then I'm also going to add another item, which is going to be the state code as well. So we're going to add a city.state code. And then finally, you can go ahead and add the name of the city that this is. So you can actually add anything you want here. Just to give you an example of what item is being saved to your database, if you're using this to actually save an item to your database. So I'm just going to get the name of the particular city where I'm at. So let's go ahead and just publish this to view again these options, how they look different, if you want to use them or if you don't want to use them. This is entirely optional. All right, so we're back here on the live site, and let's start having a live example. Let's go to India and let's head over to Delhi, and over here we have the cities that are in Delhi. So let's just go to New Delhi, and as you can see, that is able to select because we have a valid value. And let's say we want to change this and go to Indonesia. You can see that selects the very first item that we have, and if you click on Bali, you can see that selects the very first option from the drop down. Now let's go back and enable this just to have another view of having these undefined properties or not. So it depends on you. If you want it to select the very first option from the drop down, that is totally fine. If you don't want it to select the very first option, then you can also do this procedure. So let's go ahead and test this out. All right, so we're going to use India again and test this out. So when we go over to Delhi and go over to New Delhi, And then let's go ahead and change this, and as you can see, it changes to select state or select city. So this is a choice that you can make. It's entirely up to you, and you can definitely select anything else that you want. And if you go ahead and select another option from the states, you should also remove the selected value from the city drop down. And this is an interactive procedure just to make things, look better for your site users. So this is how to add a conditional drop down menus for your country, state, and city. And I will really do appreciate if you subscribe to my channel, as this will be a tremendous help to my channel, and it also let these videos be available to everyone who needs features like this on their Wix website. And most importantly, this works for Wix Studio. So thank you very much, and I will see you in the next tutorial.